There's a strong likelihood you might be offended. Yeah, this is one of those videos. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to my channel. This week, I've seen a lot of stories floating around that directly relate to the overt or covert segregation of races. Yeah, I'm talking about you, whitey. We don't serve your kind here. Now, the first story that popped up on social media about this talks about a young female rapper who dropped out of a music festival in Detroit because the organizers were charging white people and black people different ticket prices. Because at this point, like, why not? While we're at it, why not just resurrect the Jim Crow laws? Because segregation worked out so well the first time round. It's so funny to me how these people who are so keen on addressing inequality end up creating it. It just kills me. Let's all have a hand for the forward thinkers. Detroit event initially charged white people more for tickets than black people. Organizers said they set different prices so people of color in Detroit had equal opportunity to enjoy events in their own community. This is so funny to me as well, because it's like, well, if you want this to be affordable for people and you want more people to come, why not just have a lower price for everyone? But there's a word for what's going on at this music festival. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Oh yeah, discrimination. This actually caused me to go and look up the statistics of pay in Detroit, and I found out something kind of interesting. Well, actually, to be fair, this is probably not going to surprise any of you, but Asian Americans are actually the population in Detroit that make the most amount of money. Actually, they make a significantly higher amount than white people. Now I'm wondering if Asians are considered people of color. Imagine being so economically and socially unaware that you actually make ticket prices lower for the people who earn the most money. There's a word for that too. Irony. Organizers initially promoted on Eventbrite that early POC or people of color tickets were available for $10. Non-POC, which is us horrible white people, had tickets available for $20. Non-POC is referred to as white people on the Eventbrite page. So I guess based on that description then, Asians actually are people of color? To be honest with you guys, I am absolutely not really all that sure who fits into all these different victim groups anymore. So there's that. Now, after becoming aware that the organizers were charging people different prices based on their race, which I'm pretty sure is illegal, Eventbrite actually had the good sense to say to the organizers, either make the ticket prices equal for everyone, or we're deleting your event. In a statement, Eventbrite said, "We do not permit events that require attendees to pay different prices based on their protected characteristics such as race or ethnicity." I have to admit, this surprised me. I'm so used to all these companies going woke and then edging closer and closer towards justified segregation. High five for Eventbrite. On the event, organizers themselves said that their ticket structure was built to ensure that the most marginalized communities, people of color, are provided with an equitable chance at enjoying events in their community, Black Detroit. Affording joy and pleasure is unfortunately still a privilege in our society for POC, and we believe everyone should have access to receiving such. I had to read that more times than I'd like to admit because grammatically and spelling-wise, that was a mess. And my head hurts. But in this case, I don't understand. Why not just make the whole event free? Seeing as you guys love free stuff. For good reason, this story made a lot of people really angry, and a lot of people are also very quick to point out the hypocrisy of it all, also stating that if the roles were actually reversed, this really wouldn't go over so well, and it would be all over the news. And they'd be right. Jussie Smollett. I don't know about you guys, but I always like seeing people fight racism with more racism. You know, really helps bridge the divide between people. But unfortunately, but not surprisingly, this week, this wasn't the only thing that I saw that directly relates to the segregation of blacks and whites. A photo of a forum was shared on Twitter that seems like it's come from a government institution or department in South Africa. It described applying for a job and all the candidate requirements necessary. You guys are gonna want to strap in for this one. One of the requirements listed for applicants says that they must be a South African citizen, then goes on to describe that as blacks, colored, and Indians. No mention of whites at all, even though they make up you know, like 8% of the population. But whatever, that's irrelevant. Who cares about that? Now, originally when I saw this picture, I thought that it was trying to say that white South Africans aren't considered citizens, which, to be honest with you, given the climate in South Africa, could absolutely be the case. You know, I really wouldn't put it past the government. One day you're taking land away from white people, the next day you're just rescinding their citizenships. At this point, why the heck not? But I mean, you know, I don't live there, and I'm just going based off of what I've read. Don't yell at me. But upon reflection, it could just be saying that it's taking non-white applicants, which is no less discriminatory and stupid, but is a step away from completely stripping people of their citizenship. So I looked into this a little further after one of you fantastic humans told me on Instagram to look at a program in South Africa called the Black Economic Empowerment Act, also known as B. And yes, it's as bad as it sounds. For some context here, several laws came into effect at the end of apartheid in South Africa that basically sought to ameliorate some of the inequalities between the races. Well, that sounds promising. The Black Economic Empowerment Act basically gives companies and government institutions the right to discriminate against people based on race under the guise of fixing inequalities, which is basically the long and short of it. I am immediately disappointed. This is not promising at all. When you start looking into this a little more, it doesn't take long at all to find out how it works in practice. White South Africans barred from registering on government jobs website. A registration process on a government-partnered youth employment initiative has appeared to exclude white South Africans, sparking criticism from the country's trade union. The registration criteria on the website require the applicants to be Black, in accordance with the B definition, Black Economic Empowerment, between the ages of 18 to 34, and South African citizens. Real talk for a second, you know things are going to go south as soon as a government attempts to legislate different treatment for racial groups. This is just like apartheid 2.0. Black Economic Empowerment, B, is a racially selective program launched by the South African government to redress the inequalities of apartheid by giving Black South African citizens, whom they defined to include Black, colored, and Indian people, economic privileges not available to whites. How long do you guys think it'll be before the Democrats start taking cues on race from South Africa? Shortly, if the Democratic debates that we saw only a couple weeks ago give us any kind of blueprint. Terrific.
Este presidente ha atacado como humanos.
That we have never fully addressed in this country the original sin of slavery.
If a country like South Africa has taught us anything, it's how out-of-hand legislation designed to fix inequality between the races can get. This Black Economic Empowerment Initiative basically goes as far as to give companies a score and rate them based on how much of their company is run by Black people, owned by Black people, how many employees they have, and also their socio-economic output. It's called Be Compliant. Quite literally. I'm sure the irony is lost on them. But the truth is, the scores that these companies are given have real tangible effects. For example, you have to have a particular B score to be contracted on government jobs. In fact, you have to have a particular B score and rating to even apply for those government jobs. And obviously, this is just one example, and as with most things that are race-related, it is complicated and nuanced. I'm not saying it isn't. Don't yell at me! But as we are plunged further and further into righting historical or present-day wrongs, whether they be real or imagined, because let's be fair, leftists often see harm where it doesn't exist, these initiatives, legislation, acts, different things that are going on between the races often end up backfiring and not even helping the people that they're designed to help. It's clear at this point, at least to me, that a lot of these processes basically just end up being racially discriminatory towards white people and have absolutely zero positive impact on the Blacks or the other minority groups that they're attempting to help. And almost all of this is characterized by massive amounts of hypocrisy. For example, when I was researching for this video, I found a lot of websites that are designed to help Black Americans find work in the country, which is fine. But the reality is that if that happened in reverse and there are websites entirely dedicated to helping only white people find jobs, well, the screaming would never end. They would more than likely be pulled down for being racist and discriminatory. I mean, really, at this point, what isn't racist and discriminatory? And a lot of this is absolutely no different to companies like the BBC offering positions to non-white people only, or when universities attempt to have a certain level of diversity and therefore pick students based on physical characteristics rather than merit. Even most Western governments are getting just like that, even with this weird, annoying attempt to have gender quotas and things. Can we just stop, please? I mean, when it comes to government, it's not like any of this really matters that much anyway. They're useless no matter how diverse they are. You can take that to the bank. After the government has taxed that, of course. But companies and universities and the government can actually feel very comfortable doing this sort of thing because they see it as a way of not only encouraging diversity, but addressing inequality, regardless of the negative consequences. But the question here is, how successful can it ever be addressing inequality with racism and discriminatory practices? Probably not that successful. One of the primary issues with treating us differently and segregating us based on how we look is that this is the exact thing that these people are trying to fight against. And legislating for this kind of thing is really dangerous because, let's be totally honest, government rarely gets it right. In my opinion, I believe that most people should at least be aware, if not a little bit concerned, about how much we engage with not just discrimination, but actual open segregation, because that kind of seems to be the way that a lot of these processes are heading. It may start off with forcing white people to pay more for crappy festival tickets, but it ends with government legislation that means you can't get a job because you're white. But in the end, none of this can end well. And that is my social forecast. So what do you guys think? Is there a space for positive segregation and discrimination based on inequalities? Is it always completely wrong? And is South Africa totally losing the plot? As always, if you liked the video, hit subscribe and the thumbs up button. If you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so. Just be respectful about it. And I will see you guys next time.